What is up, and welcome back to 24 Minutes of Not A24, the podcast that takes a look at movies outside of the A24 library, literally 24 minutes at a time. I am Ethan Simi.
And I'm Ben Lawhorn. This week on the pod, we are filling out all of the paperwork at CRS and blurring the lines between reality and everything else as we talk about David Fincher's The Game.
After a wealthy San Francisco banker is given an opportunity to participate in a mysterious game, his life is turned upside down as he begins to question if it might really be a concealed conspiracy to destroy him.
Ooh.
That sounds really dark, and honestly, it does get that dark. Really quick, before we start talking about the game, we do want to take some very valuable time outside of this 24 minutes here to shout out our newest patron of the show, Christian Renteria. I hope I'm saying that right. Christian, thank you so much for subscribing to our Patreon. This is incredible. We're so excited to have you, especially for our very, first episode of David Fincher. You're tuning in at the greatest time. And you have actually encouraged us to set up a new rule here on the show. Ben, do you want to share what that new rule is?
I do want to. I think we both...
Because you invented it, so I want to give you credit.
Or blame. One or the other.
One or two.
In Mission Impossible, when we first started this, we would sometimes go over the time limit because we were so passionate what we were talking about. And we ended up having to do some hot sauce punishments. But I think we've got it pretty dialed in now where we're able to finish almost on the dot at 24 minutes. I'm curious what the next movie will be that makes us go over. Maybe it'll be The Killer. Who knows? Maybe it'll be Social Network.
I think it's The Social Network. I was going to say, I don't think it's very far away.
There's going to be, or I'll, talk about my sexual awakening with Fight Club. It's hard to say. The thought here was to incentivize people, and to thank them for signing up and just to punish ourselves. I thought with every new patron that signs up, we will start out that episode with a hot sauce, just like we do if we go over. We feel like the punishments are fun. Hopefully they're enjoyable to listen to me hiccup for 24 minutes sometimes. But we just thought, you know what, we gotta raise the stakes a little bit. We're really dialed in now. This 24 minutes. What can we do? And I thought, well, if we get a new patron, let's give them a shout out and then let's do a hot sauce for them. That's what we're gonna be doing moving forward.
So starting next week. So we just had this idea right now. And so we're going to, right before we started recording. So we're going to do a hot sauce punishment next week where we will be covering Fight Club next week.
Cool.
So be on the lookout for that. Christian, tune in for that. Now that you're a patron, all of our patrons, be ready for that. And if you know anybody that wants to become a patron or just enjoys, seeing us take hot sauce, I guess, have them subscribe because we'll do it. That's the rules now, and there's no bending the rules.
Like our own personal jigsaws. For $4, you can make us go through this punishment.
Do you want to play it? Do you want to play a game? So this is the first movie of our David Fincher series. Like I mentioned, we're going to be doing Fight Club next week.
Yeah.
We are going to be doing Zodiac after that, The Social Network, Gone Girl, and then culminating in The Killer, David Fincher's newest movie. Huge year for killers and Hitman, honestly, because we got Richard Linklater's Hitman coming out. We've got The Killer, really exciting stuff. We decided to go through Fincher's filmography chronologically. So we are starting with the first movie that we picked that we wanted to be on this show. We only had 6 weeks, so we could only pick really 5, in addition to The Killer. So we thought The Game, 1997, underrated Fincher, part of the Criterion Collection, and actually... I found a Criterion Collection version when I was out shopping for movies this past weekend, just in time for this podcast, which I'm serendipitous. That could be part of The Game. I could be set up right now.
That could be it. And isn't that artwork great in retrospect, having seen the movie? Like the artwork's pretty fucking good.
It's so good. So yes, Michael Douglas plays Nicholas Van Orton, a very wealthy banker. Sean Penn plays his brother. And basically Sean Penn gifts him this service, right? Through CRS is what the company is called, and Consumer Recreation Services, and fills out paperwork for 12 hours probably, and goes through physicals and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then the game begins, or so he thinks, or believes, or whatever have you. And it's really a descent into lonely madness for the back half of the movie, at least, if not 3/4 of the movie. Excellent film, just a sublime movie, and I'm really curious as we go how these Fincher rankings are going to fall out, because we are talking about a lot of big directors this fall, a lot of people coming out with movies. I personally find Fincher's filmography the hardest, if not one of the most difficult to rank. Because, like, to me, The Game is like almost a 5-star movie. It's right there. I love it so much. I don't think anybody else, very few people, admire it as much as that.
Yeah, I mean, we had to leave some eaters off of this list, like going into it. Yeah, he's got a lot of really good stuff here, and it was pretty difficult to get it down to these, but I'm glad we're starting out with this one. It was such a fun rewatch. Like, you talk about all the paperwork, and then the game starts, and like it's funny because in the movie, like they call him and they're like, "Hey, sorry, you didn't make the cut." He's like, "What? Are you kidding me?" And so he's just like, "Yeah, all right, I guess I'm not in it now, but what the fuck?" Which
is the conversation that he walks in on, the operator calling somebody initially when he goes to CRS.
Yeah.
She has the same message. So like she is obviously initiating the game for somebody else as he joins as well.
It's just so smart. It's so good. I will say it was funny because like we go through this almost like montage with him of just like, oh, he's kind of an asshole. He's like, no, I don't do that. I don't want to do that. I don't have time for this, blah, blah, blah.
I feel guilty when I masturbate. Like question mark.
Well, even just before that, when we're getting to know him as the businessman, like with his assistant, he's like, no, cancel that. Oh, he's like, I'm so busy. But then, suddenly he has like 13 hours to fill out paperwork all day long. It's like, I guess he can clear his schedule if he needs to, but this is a man who didn't seem to have time for anything. All those questions were pretty intense. They were pretty funny to hear. I don't know. Michael Douglas in this movie is great. Sean Penn is great as his brother.
Really good.
He calls him Connie, like Conrad, but like in his limited screen time,
keys are
we get like 5 minutes of him, 7 minutes of him. Like we don't get a ton, but he utilizes every single second. And that scene right there too. Like this is a movie I think that also like a lot of good movies, it pays off in a whole new way on a rewatch. Like when you know what has happened and you watch it again, you're like, oh my God, man, this is crazy. He has no idea. Like it's just so good.
Well, here's the thing. We're talking about it now, and I was already on the cusp of like 5 stars. And I keep a list on Letterboxd of like movies that I've ranked 5 stars. I've only ever ranked 49 films 5 stars, which might be a lot. I don't know. I feel like it's not when I see like, 300 movies a year. I feel like 49 in my lifetime is like pretty selective.
Is Joker one of those?
Absolutely not.
Okay,
no.
good. All right.
Look, Joker 2 is coming out. New pictures are coming out, and I need to distance myself from what is about to go down on social media and that group. So I'm just here to say I had a good time watching Joker, and that's as far as my Joker opinion goes. I won't attach to any more. I think The Game is gonna. I think I'm gonna do it. I think I'm gonna put it at 5 stars because you're right. Each rewatch. Now I saw this back in April. I rewatched it in April for I don't know. I think I just wanted to. Like I was just like, I haven't seen The Game in a long time. Now this is the 3rd time I've seen it, and it just gets better. Like especially you mentioned that Sean Penn car scene where he's like, I can't trust the hotel room. I sure as shit can't trust your car. And he's like ripping out wires and he's like freaking out and he thinks Michael Douglas is in on it. And he's like, you pop the tire. And it's really a fascinating descent into madness of like
for sure.
Complete untrust with anybody or anything around you. And the ending still works for me. The ending still works. Like I think we get to the rooftop and we get to him like shooting Connie and you're just like, oh, like, fuck, dude, they like, come on. Like they had everything like organized so this would not happen. And then he jumps through the roof and then Connie's there and he's alive. And then I think what I respect most about this is Fincher being like exceptionally like fiendish and just like starting the movie with Sean Penn doing a Seymour Butts joke and then ending the movie with Sean Penn holding up a shirt that says like, I was drugged and left for dead in Mexico and all I got was this shirt, which I think is an incredible bookend to this movie. So funny. I love this movie. Ben, would you sign up for The Game? Would you go to CRS and do the paperwork?
Absolutely not. Like after watching this, like the amount of like losing his mind Michael Douglas
psychological
shows in this
trauma,
movie, like it is crazy. Like specifically, I mean, we'll get talking about this later on, but when he goes into that cafeteria and sees everybody, and it just
So
like
sick, bro.
solidifies everything he's thought. He's like, I knew it. I found it out. I'm gonna fucking kill these people. Like it's over, whatever. Like, oh my God. Like he actually like we've seen Falling Down, and this is like Falling Down too.
And that's what I was gonna say. Like I see that scene and I'm just like, let's fire Falling Down. Like let's get the double picture going.
Yeah, he does so good. It's a great descent into madness throughout this whole movie. Michael Douglas does it perfectly.
Yeah, incredible. Okay, I'm going to start with my first true cinema moment, and it is the power outage at the hospital. Now, this is like really the first visible, noticeable scene where the game has been instigated, it has been started, and we are deep in the game. This is where he kind of follows Christine, this waitress, out, and they end up at a hospital, and all the lights go out. And as soon as all the lights go out, he's just like, yeah, see, part of the game. And it's just like, dude, you don't even know what you're talking about. Like you've been in the game for 30 seconds. Like you act like you know a lot around Christine and you don't. And then they get in the elevator and like we're off. Like we set into motion very quickly of like, okay, how do we solve this? What is this key for? What are these items about? And like that's the first huge moment where like, and everybody runs away and he's like, see, everybody's in on it. And like you get to the end and you're just like, he was fucking right. He knew it. Yeah. Like he was not phased until he went insane.
And it's funny though, because that gets like interspersed with things like when Connie's in the car and they get a flat tire, and Connie's like, "Oh, it's a part of it. I knew they were gonna do." He's like, "No, it's just a flat tire." It's like, dude, these people came in and like spray painted your house and like they did all this shit, and you don't think they could plan a flat tire for you? You know? He's like, "Nah, it's just a flat tire, no big deal." You know, like there are some moments where he's just so blasé, like, "No, this is just happening naturally." It's like, no, dude, like where have you been for the last hour? Like obviously these people are coming after you. This is insane. So yeah. Before I get into mine, do you feel like the theme intro to Succession came from this movie?
100,000,000%.
Right?
I almost
Were you
texted
thinking that the minute that happened?
I was like going to try to chop like part of this movie and put it against the Succession video and like put it out on Twitter and be like, guys, are we sure that Succession really came up with this? Because the game did it first.
Yeah, seriously.
It's spot on, dude. It's literally spot on.
It's so good.
It's insane.
My first one is when he goes home for that first time and, you know, finds that clown that like brings it inside the house. But then the news reporter starts talking to him, and it's just like, oh, dude, like it gave me little flashbacks to the Mission Impossible, and they have Wolf Blitzer do the whole thing, you know. It's
Don't
like,
get me fired up about that scene, Ben. That's an all timer.
But it's like, oh, it's kind of similar where they must have obviously, because this dude is a legit dude. We see him on the news the night before. Like we set the tone here. It's like, okay, this is just like what he does every night. He watches this show. And then all of a sudden, the newscaster guy is talking to him. He's like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. Or like, oh, be careful prying that, you know, all this kind of stuff. So, I know, pretty cool. That was just like my favorite, like part of this, like of the intro. It's like, oh, the game has started now. Like, even though they told you didn't make the cut, like you are fucking in the game.
They lied. I also would not do the game. I realized I didn't answer that question. No, absolutely not. I could not hang. I just don't have it in me. It's just, it's like what we mentioned for like Lone Wolf and Cub. I'm just like, couldn't be a samurai. I don't know. Something like inherent. I just couldn't be part of the game. Okay. My second is, and you kind of touched on this, is when we're, really kind of diving into the third act. It feels like the big third act kickoff here where he goes back to his home and he turns on all the lights and we have all this black light spray paint and this overpowering and overwhelming. You'll have to help me because you're far better versed in music than I am. Whatever song that is that plays when he is in his home, and it's like kind of the drums. That's the same song that was in the trailer for The Matrix Revolutions. And I remember because that trailer was a long time ago. And I remember when I watched the game back in April, I was like, that's the same song for Matrix Revolutions. That's pretty sick. And it's actually a really good song. Dang, what song? You hunt it down. You figure it out because I have no idea.
Yeah, I'll figure it out what that is. But yeah,
it's a banger. That's a great scene. And that's
is
really...
it White Rabbit?
Oh, yeah.
Jefferson
it must be
Airplane,
White Rabbit.
Right? Yeah. Okay, cool.
Super, super good. Blaring. And really, that like I said, like kicks off the third act and instills this massive sense of paranoia of like, they got to his home.
Yeah.
They got to his house. And like, what are we going to do? Like, this is it. Your life is infiltrated. You're not just like, having water spilt on you or having like soup spilt on you now. Like this is full blown.
And like his housekeeper had no idea.
No clue.
That someone came in or she was in on it. You know what I mean? Whatever. But like she had no idea people showed up at the house. I think she's been with him way too long, but I don't know. His ex-wife was in like, I don't know. Everybody
she was in on it,
at
dude.
some point.
Oh,
so like,
wow.
Maybe they paid off his housekeeper too. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Probs.
That was also on mine. So I'm going to kind of,
sorry,
let's see.
stolen.
No, it's all good. One that I really enjoyed, just a specific shot, but out of a larger scene, is when he goes to that hotel room and we see all those Polaroids and stuff on the table.
Oh.
There's this sick shot of him in the mirrored table, like walking up to it, and as he comes into frame through the mirrored glass, like of the table, like, oh, that shot is so cool. Like you're watching him come to realization with like, oh shit, like all this stuff, like the people down at the desk were like, oh, it's great to see you again. Like, what are you talking about? Whatever. And then he goes up into the room and it is just a fucking wreck. Looks like he just partied all night long. And then he's seeing all these like
rager,
pretty salacious, like Polaroids and stuff. He's like, oh my God, like what did I do last night? Like, was I here? Am I being framed? What's happening? But just a really cool shot that I just love that mirror shot, but really the whole hotel room scene is great.
Yeah, again, I know we mentioned last week on The Creator, but like big Minority Report vibes with this, because there is a scene in Minority Report where like he goes into a hotel room and there's just Polaroid pictures of like a life that he didn't live, essentially.
Yeah.
And so yeah, very similar to that. Okay, my third true cinema is the ending, is the jumping off the building. I think this is a perfect encapsulation and real like juxtaposition of like or peak of like, we've been doing the game, things have been continually ratcheting up, so much so that he decides to end it. He's ready. He's done. He jumps off the roof and he says something, and I don't know if it's at the scene. I don't know. He mentions something at some point in the movie of like, how much of my father is in me. I think it's prior. He's kind of having dinner with his maid. Yeah. And he's like, how much of him lies in me, and these things that really sets the base for like this final moment happening of like, does like Succession, does the poison drip through? And it inevitably does. He jumps off and he jumps into the massive, like, whatever.
Airbag thing.
Yeah, the huge airbag. And like, we get the t-shirt, and this is a really wonderful Fincher moment to like play out all this traumatic stress with some incredible humor right off of the bat. And Sean Penn comes in and delivers and is like, do you want to cover half of this tab? And they're like, oh my God, yeah, like we'll split it. And like, really an interesting change up tonally that I think works really, really well for like the final 7 minutes of the movie, essentially.
Yeah, because he thinks he's just killed his brother.
Yeah.
And then because he's so worried about being so much like his dad, it's almost like he consciously chooses to go out the same way his dad did, because we see his dad had committed suicide before. Because
he had a gun. He could have shot himself.
Yeah, he definitely could have. But it just also speaks to like how planned out these things are, that they knew he would jump. It's like, oh yeah, no, he's like, this is what he would end up doing. It's just like, it's nuts. It
is kind of like Saw. I know you mentioned Saw at the top of the pod, but like Saw, a very overwhelming theme in Saw is that the main character of Tobin Bell's character is like, he thinks of every human possibility. And like, that's a huge thing in Saw X, where like the twist works because we don't see it, but he sees it, and he is able to figure out like every single possible reaction from a human and what they're most likely to do. And that is exactly the case in here.
Yeah, 100%. I like, the jump was great. My other one, it was the cafeteria, because I thought that scene played out so well. But the last thing I'm going to mention is we get just a little Spike Jonze sighting for 3 seconds.
Yes.
It's like, I'm going to take your pulse, and like, I've seen this movie, I don't know how many times before, and I think I knew he was in it, but I rewound it again this time. I was like, wait, was that fucking Spike Jonze? Like, and we don't see him again ever. Like, he's not brought up. And I was like, oh my God, like that's the director of Her, and like, just that's like, he's just like showing up for a second. He's like, I'm going to pretend to be a paramedic. Like,
yeah.
did Fincher just call him, like maybe he was just working on something there. He's like, hey, you want to be in my movie? Like, come,
100%.
come take care of Michael Douglas. Like, and like not even the same day. Cause it's just like a up shot of Spike Jonze. Like, I just need you to say this one thing and then we'll be good. Like, man, that's crazy that all of a sudden he's just there. So I don't know. That would be my last one, is the Spike Jonze sighting.
That's pretty good. Okay, so I have a bunch of honorable mentions real fat that are just like quick little funny nuggets that I think really elevate this movie to be a potential 5-star, if not like one of Fincher's best for sure. So I'm just going to run through these. I mentioned the Seymour Butts joke. If you get that in the first 5 minutes of an incredibly serious psychological thriller, I feel like we're doing something right. Nicholas, forced to hold the Chinese food at CRS, which I thought was hysterical. He just like, the guy just like offloads this Chinese food on him and just has to hold it. Put him in his place, I guess.
So good.
When Christine comes back to his house after they kind of like escape these dogs and everything together, and she starts undressing and goes to take a shower, take me to Pound Town. I need to see them have sex because they're two very attractive people, and that scene is riddled with sexual tension, and my guy just dying to get one off because this psychological terror is ripping him apart from the inside out. So
can't imagine how pent up he is.
I can't even fathom. So give me some of that good stuff. Next door neighbor, not fazed by gunfire because we're having a massive shootout, but when Christine and Nicholas run by her door and go downstairs, then she gets up out of her chair and is like, hey, what's all that ruckus?
Yeah.
I thought that was great. Jim, this guy that's, part of the cafeteria scene, his picture is next to Kenny Loggins at New Moon, which I thought was just incredible. I guess they're like, I don't know, maybe in this universe, they're pretty cool, pretty much the same. We got a BMW car phone, top tier stuff from Michael Douglas. Love to see it. And then the last one that I wanted to say, when he gets dumped in Mexico, which admittedly is a very interesting creative decision to go to Mexico, and then we have to find our way back, which kind of, I guess, elevates and makes it more of a vast game, if you will. He gathers enough to get on a bus, but before he gets on the bus, he's at a street taco stand and he just starts like forking a street taco down his mouth, and then he gets on the bus, which I thought was a genius decision from Michael Douglas here, where he's just like, let me go to town on this taco real fast before I get on a bus all the way to San Francisco.
Can you imagine how good that tasted to him? Like after
I can't even imagine
being trapped in that box and just the shit he's been going through. That's probably the best taco he's ever had in his life and will ever have.
Yeah, he'll never eat a better taco than that. Would this fit in the A24 catalog? Maybe. I think it's far too linear. I think like if you're going the psychological thriller route, I think like you take some hard left creative decisions or zag really hard for A24, and this doesn't do that.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I think like the story elements, I think could be found in an A24 movie, but maybe not this way exactly.
Mm-hmm. Next week on the Patreon, we are talking about Fight Club, or are we talking about Fight Club? Is it 24 minutes of silence? Like, I don't know what the plan has been.
I'm just going to be thinking about shirtless Tyler Durden the whole time and Helena Bonham Carter. So whatever you want to do with your 24 minutes, feel free. But that's what I'll be here doing.
That's what you're doing. Good.
Yeah,
okay.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be good. I'm not looking forward to the hot sauce, so that might play into it as well. We'll see. But Christian, thank you so much for signing up. We appreciate that, as well as all of our other Patreons. Let us know what you thought about the game. Have you seen this Fincher movie? We highly recommend it if you haven't picked up on that already. We're on Twitter and Instagram at 24 Minutes of A24. We are also on YouTube. Again, thank you so much for your support. We appreciate it. And I am Ben Lawhorn.
And I'm Ethan Simi. I am being tortured on this podcast, and all I got was this dumb t-shirt.
Absolutely not.